Here we go. We're in and on the DJ level. Jason, how you doing? Welcome to the studio, man.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah,
Love it.
it's not bad. It's a little home studio, and I do the live switching here, so I don't have to fucking edit later. That's a misery. But yeah, so I was saying, as we were talking about when we came into the studio, just the television shows. Like, there's so many different ways to, you know, peel the onion. Get stuff done, and because no one makes independent television, like everyone just
Right.
pitches stuff, gets it commissioned. Um, you know, Fiction, that would be kind of impossible if it was all scripted and stuff like that. But nonfiction stuff, even people really aren't going out and doing their stuff. They do a lot of like docs, like films, like 60 minutes, 90 minutes, but no one's going out and trying to make like eight episodes or something.
Don't think I know anybody who's ever made a TV show and then I know people who have created ideas for shows
Yeah.
and then sold the idea or something. But as far as shooting it and selling it, like what you've done, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's just no one wanted to work with me. So it was just like, what do you do? What do you do if you have all these ideas about, traveling the world and going to all these like amazing places? And then I had two incredible cinematographers that I worked with I worked with the same guys for like a decade. Same editors, two editors I worked with, three camera guys I worked with. And it was just like a dream come true. We're just a great crew. Cause the thing is, like, if you're gonna do 8 episodes of a hardcore adventure television show, the way to do it is, it doesn't matter what the schedule is when you release them or publish them onto the airwaves or whatever, but you got to save your hardest trips for last, right? So and that's the other thing too about keeping the crew together for a whole season. So you start off on the first one, okay, it's a smaller mountain, not too tough, right? Second one, maybe you walk across a desert, and then by the third one, you're doing 23, 24, 25,000 meter or 25,000 foot peaks, in Argentina or Nepal or something like that. So, and if you don't keep your guys together and you don't stay busy enough, you lose the crew, you lose all the skill that
Right.
you've built up, and then guys are getting sick and guys are falling apart, instead of filming it in crazy places. So that was always a big thing. We always tried to keep the guys together, keep them busy, and keep the filming going at a rate where we could stay super fit, and not get too
Yeah.
lazy.
Yeah. Climbing a mountain with camera gear, like that's no joke because you have to climb ahead, turn around, film it.
Yeah,
It's so hard. I've done some of that, so I know how hard that is.
So we always have porters. So we always have people we work with. Like, we never go climbing around by ourselves. Like Jimmy Chin and these guys like Alex Hall, like they're all climbing by themselves all around the world. Like, we have guides who take us up the mountain to make sure we're safe. Cause like, we're good, but we're not like mountain climbing experts, right? So when we walk across deserts, we always have like camel drivers with us who do the trip all the time. We filmed 2 amazing episodes in China in 2 totally different deserts. One was the Bourdain Jarian Desert on the border with Mongolia,
Yeah.
and that's known for having the highest sand dunes in the world. And we just ripped right through. We did like 120 miles in 12 days right across this really remote stretch of it, and it was just spectacular. But we always have people with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to get the I think most people that don't know, I don't know if most of your audience is film people, but to get the shots of climbing
Mhm.
or whatever, you can't just hike along and shoot the back of someone's head. You've got to like
Get in
get
front.
around them or get on another peak and shoot across. Like it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So that's very difficult, and the physical taxation it's tough to
It
do outdoor stuff like that is really hard.
it is, yeah. And the drones have made things a lot easier. So sometimes like the guys would get up ahead to camp and I would hang back, and then they would float a drone, and I would do like the last half hour on foot coming into camp, like, or coming into wherever we were going to go to next, and they would just follow me with the drone. And of course you can get nice and low, you can get eye level with it, and then you pull back and just see how remote it is. And yeah, and I was the director of the series, but I leaned heavily on my 2 cinematographers who were super creative, and I kind of just let them do whatever they wanted.
So when you're out there, are you like, we're- I'm a guest on your show and I'm asking you all about
It's all good.
when you're being outdoors, your hair's a mess and you're getting boogers and your face is frozen. I mean, do you have a mirror that you look up and like make sure there's no like bats in the cave or anything like that?
No hair and makeup.
That's great.
Well, I mean, like, we're off for an adventure, right? So you can't control it. So there's no vanity, and it's just about like being out there and loving it. And yeah, like there were some days that were just brutal. Like, I remember at Aconcagua, it was like minus 40 degrees Celsius and minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's where the two scales meet. And you know, it was like 2 a.m. and we had to, you know, hike up to the summit. And I just remember, you know, being freezing. And I had like super red cheeks because I was getting like frostbite and stuff. I was just
Oh, wow.
brutal. But yeah, you just kind of keep going and then you warm up eventually.
Yeah, right, right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, but we are here to talk about you today. Thank you for swinging by, film director. But you know, feel free to ask me anything we get into along the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we'll nerd out about film, I'm sure, especially because I'm an outdoor guy too, and I've mountain climbed and dove on whitewater kayaker, all that stuff. So seeing what you do is very exciting to me. That's really cool. But
Yeah. Well, because I grew up in, I kind of like, I did my adulting in China, right? So I
mhm.
went there when I was like 22 and I didn't know anything. So then I got in to started being a journalist and a photographer and stuff like that. And then I started going out because I lived in Shanghai. It was crazy. There's like 30 million people there. And I was craving nature. So whenever all the correspondents that I was working with were taking time off or Easter or Christmas or whatever, I would go to Tibet and I started
Nice.
doing hiking and camping and stuff like that, and I got into it really quite early, like 2003-ish or 4, and then from there, I was doing photo assignments and writing on those journeys and selling them in, like, travel magazines and stuff like that. And then, you know, with Lehman Brothers collapsing in 2008, that killed the print publishing industry. So my photography career was finished because people just couldn't pay you and the assignments just stopped coming in. So I was like, well, I want to still keep traveling the world and stuff like that and meeting amazing people. How do I do it? And I was just like, well, I got to make television now. So then I just figured out how to make television.
Was it an easy transition to go from photos to video?
Yeah, it was once you have your team in place. I think that's the most daunting thing because I knew how to produce the visuals that I wanted. I knew what we needed to get story-wise to fill like a
Mhm.
46-minute episode, which is what it is in Europe. I think in the US, it's 42 minutes per hour. And then back in the day before streaming. And then it's just about having an editor, like who can go through it with you and who's really in touch and in tune with what you wanted to show. And once I had my team together, we went crazy. Like I think we filmed 50 hours of adventure television in like less than 5 years to just in the build up to the pandemic once I put the whole team
Okay.
together. Yeah.
So
But
when you first started, this is so funny that I'm interviewing you. But when I'm curious, dear viewer, if the
my mom will be happy.
well, what's funny is when like if you're a photographer, and I've done this photography as well, you're great at taking pictures, and everyone always wants you to take their picture
Mhm.
because you're so good at the frame. Oh man, the sun always looks perfect. But then someone takes your picture, and it's like, did you not see the garbage can behind me? Okay, it's very hard to photograph yourself. So I imagine when you first started, there may have been some bumps in the road of like, I don't know. I'm just assuming, but that's always harder when you give the camera over to someone else to film you
Yeah.
and you just roll the dice and hope they know what they're doing.
I was really lucky with Chad Ingram and Jesse Rosenberg and Daniel Milton, my 3 cinematographers that I worked with, because they're just brilliant composers of frames. And Chad especially was my director of photography on every single show I made.
Okay.
And yeah, he was with me for, yeah, from 2010 right up until COVID. And then we all went our separate ways, sadly. But yeah, I had complete trust in him. So
That's cool.
yeah, and it was really rough and ready too. Like when we were at camp and stuff like that, we used the bigger cameras, and then we were on the trail and stuff like that. We had smaller SLR,
Mhm.
digital SLRs and GoPros and stuff like that. So we could make the journey like look and feel a little bit rougher, a little shakier. And then when we got to camp, we could do set pieces and stuff like that. So we were just trying to match these two energies of like being on the road and then arriving somewhere at the end of a long day and eating and watching the sunset and stuff like that. And then interacting with our team too, because like I said, we had camel drivers and a cook and everything like
Oh,
that. So
okay. Yeah, yeah.
like the camel driver brought his brother and his brother brought his wife, to cook and manage. Like we had 16 camel caravan.
Mhm.
We had to carry all of our water. We had a generator, a diesel generator. We had diesel fuel. So it was a big, it's a, like the logistics of filming out in those remote places, I think are the most interesting. That's why I love producing it. Cause I
Yeah.
pick all the places, I pick all the guides, I manage all the routes and stuff like that. And then when we actually get there, I'm just like euphoric because it all worked out exactly how I wanted it to.
Mhm.
So it was I loved producing. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
What a job.
Yeah.
It's very lucky to it's hard to survive in film no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, and we were talking, I think, before you started recording, how hard there's so many different ways to work in film. I think most of us, at least for me, I always wanted to make direct movies, but I was never told there were so many options for how to survive
Mhm.
in this industry. There's like like just doing commercials. Like that's one way of doing work, but no one dreams of being a commercial director.
Mhm.
Like no one sets out to do that. Or like I've got a
Mhm.
niche is the word I was looking for, of doing narrative films in the corporate space. So like cinematic, dramatic works. So for example, a hospital network hired me to do a they wanted to tell the story of the history of hospitals, how hospitals were created. Where did the idea of a hospital even come from? And this was they wanted to make a film for um, orientation. So when new employees come in, they watch a film and it was meant to inspire them to like, this is why we do what we do, that kind of thing. And they didn't want to do just a guy in a tie speaking documentary style, like typical for corporate. They wanted to do a narrative piece. So actors, the whole thing. And it turns out that hospitals, I don't know if you know the history, but like back in the ancient world, hospitals didn't exist. Like, you know, like say if you got leprosy, you were thrown out. You were ostracized from community. This is where leper colonies came from
Mhm.
because they just didn't have anywhere else to go. And yeah, it sucks because you got to throw your kid out or something because we got to throw you out because we'll all get it. Bye. Plagues, the same thing. They would just die on the street. It wasn't until the early monks and early nuns decided, hey, maybe we should like instead of letting people die on the street, maybe we should put them in a house and give them some water and food. And that was the first iteration of a hospital.
Mhm.
So I had to basically make a story about that. And, nice budget and like really cool cinematic piece of like, and it was like really moving and inspiring to like see how that all came together. Anyway, so I have a lot of people call me to do these kinds of things. It's really fun.
Mhm.
Like it's like making movies, but much smaller scale. It's not like 2 hours long. Usually they're short, but like it's amazing. And that's just one little tiny niche in the industry that you can actually do and make a living at that no, I've never even heard anybody talk about it.
No, and let's blame high school guidance counselors for fucking not getting it done. Sorry everyone out there, but like no one tells people like these exist, right? And
Hmm.
no one is asking people like you and me who have kind of gone off and done our own things and had various levels of success or whatever. No one's asking us to go back into these schools and teach people like you don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer. You don't have to,
Yep.
you don't have to be a coffee boy at a production company for a whole year before you're even allowed to like read a script or talk to anyone, right? Like
Hmm.
there's other ways of doing it. And I actually think that I went to China in 2001 with no idea what I wanted to do and fell into storytelling and image making and then television just because I was free to try a whole bunch of stuff and my cost of living was really low at that time and I could take risks. I could work a little bit and allocate a certain amount of my budget to try different things. And I was producing a lot of stuff on my own. And then I learned how to produce on my own and sell it because people wouldn't pay me to go out and do the things I wanted to do. So I just started doing it right away. And then that's the entire basis for my television career as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we won a bunch of awards like here, I guess you have the Emmys and stuff like that, or the Peabodys for journalism and stuff like that. But in Asia, where most of my stuff was based, we had the like Asian Academy Awards, which was kind of like the equivalent. And we would always be nominated for best
That's awesome.
cinematography, best director, best all this kind of stuff. We were always like right up there with people because we were going out and visiting places that no one wanted to commission us to go and do it. And it's only
Hmm.
because we had great agents who could sell the stuff afterwards and such a wide network of people that wanted the content that we were able to do that. Because like Discovery Channel wasn't going to hire us to go walking across the Badain Desert in China for 14 days or whatever. That just wasn't in part of their risk profile. And
Yeah.
they couldn't even vision what we would get from that. But I knew what we could get.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then, you try to explain it, but it never works. So you just have to fucking do it and then
Hmm.
figure it out later. So that was, yeah, my
Yeah.
entire career in a nutshell.
When I was in high school, I always knew what I wanted to do. I always wanted to tell stories.
Hmm.
And I looked there was some book or something about jobs. And I looked up for film, something, whatever, didn't even know the right term. The closest I could find was projectionist.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, I work a movie theater projection is like, well, hey, I guess that's it then.
That's as close as you get to be, to being creative.
Yeah. Well, and, in film and probably photography, there is no path. There's if you wanna be a doctor, there's a path. You're gonna go to school for this long, you decide what your focus is,
Mhm.
internships, residencies, all the different steps. It's all same with being a lawyer. It's the dit, 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 and then you get a job.
Mhm.
So
After you're $500,000 in debt.
right, you work work the rest of your life to pay that up. But film, there is no it's just, yeah, get in however you can, and if you don't live in LA, good luck.
Yeah.
It's so tough, so tough. It
Mhm.
was really hard for me. I didn't
I met this guy in Shanghai once, and, he worked for Miramax, back in the day, and he met me. He was an American, and he came to China, and he wanted to meet some people in film and television, and he wrote to me and wanted to have a coffee, and I said, "Yeah, great." And then he's like, we had a nice conversation. I couldn't really help him because he was looking for more scripted stuff. But I introduced him to a few other people I knew. But then at the end, he's like, "Hey, by the way, like my nephew is at NYU and he wants to be like a filmmaker. Would you have like a Skype call with him or meet him if you're ever in New York or something like that? Like that would be a great way to pay it forward." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And his nephew was Zach Romeo, who ended up directing a whole bunch of series for me. So we met.
Oh, really?
I met him when he was still at NYU, and then I started hiring him to do like little bits and pieces for YouTube and little like behind the scenes stuff for some of my shows. And then when he graduated, I hired him like right away full time, and we had a great couple of years together, also before COVID. And he's based here now, but he got me into the whole NYU mafia. So like my music composer was and went to NYU. One of my cinematographers went to NYU. The map guy that we used went to NYU. So we were able to kind of like tap that whole network. And he did more than just edit. Actually, he like supervised the entire post production with me, kind of directing it. Um, and it was great because we had this great relationship where so for like 4 years, I was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, pretty much
Mhm.
for 4 straight years. And so I would go out, film something, put it on a hard drive, send it to him, and then we'd have 2 weeks. I'd have to look at rough cuts, make notes, look at some fine cuts, make some notes, listen to the music, go into the studio, do a voiceover, and then I would go back out. And then I would come back. And we had this beautiful rhythm going for a couple of years, and we were just cranking out content. It was just a dream. And then everything just came to a grinding halt.
Yeah, pandemic. I think someday someone needs to write a book that says, "And then the pandemic hit." And it's basically all the people who had, "Well, I was about up for this big promotion
Hmm.
and then the pandemic hit," and everything it
It,
seems like everybody has that story of the thing they were about to do or they were in the middle of doing, something was about to crest.
mhm. I feel like now is what it must have felt like in the 1950s after World War II, because these world wars obviously displaced millions of people,
Mhm.
millions of people died, but obviously plans and careers and families were all just put on hold, right? Or destroyed even. And I feel like, this is like our generation's, global disruption.
It's weird. And we all went through it together. Like usually, I don't know, you get an injury and you're in the hospital for a year, or you usually go through that stuff by yourself or maybe your little nucleus of people around you, but we had this societal pause.
Mhm.
It's the strangest.
Strange, man.
I mean, I know it happened. I think the Spanish flu came through. What is it, the turn of the century?
1917, I think, or right after World War II, or right at the end of World War II, or World War One,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But it's been a long time since our society's gone through something like this. So it's weird. It's just weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's almost like it didn't happen. It's like we all skipped over a couple of years and kept going. It's just,
I think I think that the office workers of the world just kind of like rolled with the punches, right? They're like, okay, I'm working from home now for 2 or 3 years, and my wife or my husband or my wife is there, and my kids are here, and my dog and cats are here, and that was incredibly difficult and stressful. Like my brother went through that. Like it was really difficult, like having to homeschool your kid and try to get him to like sit on Zoom and get lessons from a teacher, like miserable, right? But then there's people like us that probably had our entire lives just stop.
hmm
And then it's like there's nothing else to do. Like I make money two ways, right? I either go out and make something, get on an airplane, fly to a fucking far off place, film something, and then get on a plane and come back,
hmm
or I talk in front of a room of like 500 people. Those are the only ways that I know how to make money, and both those things stopped.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fortunately for me, I did okay during the pandemic. Weirdly, at the beginning, it was a little scary, but I ended up landing a kids show, which was
Okay.
very bizarre. Like it, because I'm not a, I like kids but I don't have kids.
Mhm.
So I ended up doing this kid show. Anyway, but it was a lot of fun, super rewarding.
Mhm.
But I'm very lucky. I recognize that I was very lucky that because it kind of carried me right on through it. So
That's great that they were even filming. Was it animated or was it live action?
live action,
Okay.
and it was it was the funniest thing. It was a group of 3 guys. They said, "Well, we're realtors." I'm like, "Okay, we want to make a kids show." All right. And I thought it was just at first it was just to advise them on how to write a script. And it ended up where I was actually running the writer's room and then directing all the episodes and helped them build a set. Like it was hilarious. But they're like the best guys ever to work for. And it was kids content. So it was when you're doing a kids show, there's no you keep even if you make a mistake, it's not that big of a deal because it's a kids show. Like you could try anything.
Mm.
So it was like one of the most creatively freeing projects I've ever done
Oh,
because
that's interesting.
you could just try anything you wanted.
Yeah.
Like, can we make a hurricane? All we have is some garden hoses and smoke machines. Let's try it. Let's see. And then it worked. It worked great.
Yeah.
Like it's great practice for actual movies, but yeah.
And no high maintenance A-listers to tell you what to do?
Just little kids, get them in, get them out, at a reasonable time. And yeah.
Beautiful.
And the rules were a little bit more lax because I shot in Florida.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
that's another reason why I was because Florida was more open with pandemic rules and stuff. So that's another reason why we were able to work.
Did you ever think about moving to Austin, Texas, like everyone else in LA?
No, because I've only lived in LA. So I grew up in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, hold on. Let's do this properly. Let's do the whole
Here
thing.
we go.
So, Jason, where are you from?
Okay, I grew up in Portland, Oregon,
Uh-huh.
and the great Pacific Northwest, and always wanted to be a filmmaker. No one in my family knew anything about I knew nothing about how to get into it. My dad was a machinist, and my mom cleaned houses, so there was no path. I went to a school, taught me. I got my hands on a camera. That was about all I learned.
Did your school have like a film and television department or anything like that?
It was more communications.
Yeah.
So it was they taught me more about live television, like news. So it was something.
And how to be a projectionist?
That's right. That's right. But I got out. I had no idea what to do. I was really directionless. I had no mentor, and I knew of LA, of course, but the idea of coming here to do movies was so intimidating to me at the time. I grew up in a very conservative Christian house that was very afraid of all the world, and to make matters worse, I get out of college right when the Rodney King riots were happening.
Oh,
So
shit.
if there needed any proof on how terrible and scary the world was, that was it. Like, oh, I'm not moving there because, ooh. Anyway, so I moved to the other movie capital of the world, Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, wow. It's got to be a good place for music videos, though.
It was. And the only reason I went is I kicked around Portland for a couple years, working a dead end job. And I ran into a guy that I had met a few years back in college. And he said he lived in Nashville. And he was like, you know what? I know you do some music. You could come here and maybe get involved in some of the music industry. But because of that, there's a lot of film work. There's like music videos galore and all kinds of other stuff. It's another industry town. I'm like, I've got nothing to lose. So I moved there. I didn't even know my roommate. Like I just moved into a house with a guy and I didn't know. And then I got married right after that. So like we were newly married in a new city with knowing nobody. And that's where it all started. So I was able to work on like a lot of music videos. And if you don't know anything about Nashville, it's Music City, like country music and Christian music. That's where they all come out of.
Mhm.
And now I think a lot more just pop and rock comes out of there as well. So I was able to work with, Bon Jovi and Jack White and like, some big names and stuff. Of course, some of the legends as well, so it was a great experience. It still wasn't movies.
I'm curious, just to interrupt you. I'm curious, like this sense of fear that you had in your household when you were young. Like, how much of a disservice is that families do all around the world of just like don't go there, it's dangerous, or you shouldn't try that business because the rate of failure is very high. Like, It's funny, like, a lot of people who end up in the creative industries have
Mhm.
families that tell them not to go to LA and
Yeah.
try.
For one reason or another, it's either, oh, you need a more steady job, and they're not wrong, because it's very difficult to make a living, um, in the arts,
Mhm.
just in general, whether you're a painter or whatever. But so there's that fear that you'll never make anything. But the fear in my household was more spiritual. So you'll lose your soul kind of thing. Where you go down there to Lion's Den,
I don't care about my soul, that's fine. Just as long as I don't lose my wallet or my phone or yeah.
and you get built up.
Mhm.
And it was just, the whole world is scary out to get you. Like that was a struggle for a long time. And it did actually stunt my growth because it made it hard for me to push out there. And even way into, I lived in Nashville 13 years, and I was still too afraid to come to LA. And I'd made my first feature film by then, so like I should have gone straight to LA from there, but it didn't. Uh,
So what was the difference, like, so you graduate high school and you're thinking about going to LA and the Rodney King thing happens and you're like, "Oh," but then 4 years later you're like, "Oh, Nashville, yeah, let's try that." Like, what changed in that gap, or was it just because you knew this guy?
desperation. Like
Yeah.
I didn't. I was like, I can't work this job anymore. Like it was a computer. I was working in a computer store, so I just can't. I'm going nowhere. I can see it. I used to tell my friends like, I don't have a problem being on the bottom rung of a ladder, but I'm not even on the right ladder. I'm just where this job is not going to go anywhere. So and the only way I got work when I got there, because I still didn't know anybody, I worked waiting tables at night, and I would go to film houses and just see if I could get internships. No one was interested in that.
Mhm.
Um, Finally, I just started telling people, okay, you don't even need to give me a job. Just let me watch you work. That's all I want. I just want to be in the room where it's happening. Everyone thought I was an idiot. One guy finally said, I mean, okay, you want to just sit in the back? Yes. I just want to watch you at it. That's all I want to do. Just let me be around it.
Mhm.
And so I did. I started showing up at this guy's office. And finally, after a few weeks, he said, all right, you want to make yourself useful, learn some computer animation. Great. So I
Mhm.
jumped in. I started doing like logo animations for actually all the music because he would do music videos. So it would a little logo, animation of the logo of the music company.
Okay.
So I learned how to do that. And then he finally let me on set to do a music video. And the first one it was a music video that was a week long. I got paid $50 a day, and it was brutal. Each day was 20 hours long,
Mhm.
$50 a day. And I could not have been happier. I felt like, I was the king. Um, and that's really where things started to kind of building up. But,
It's
I
funny, like, the moment you get close to that creative space, it's just like light bulbs, like,
Mhm.
this is all I wanna do ever.
Yeah, it's like I could see the cameras going and the lights and all the actors and like seeing how they were doing some motion control work. So I was just like gobbling. I was just a sponge, just like, and yeah. And I still have that love for it because it was so hard for me to attain. I feel like I was a soldier just crawling inch by inch across the, bullets whizzing over the head. And I still feel that way. Like that's never stopped, that kind of relentless forward progression. But there's never been a big, let me take you, kid, and whisk you on up to that's never happened. It's
That doesn't
all,
happen.
yeah, it does but okay, here's the thing. We are sold, those of us who are filmmakers are sold on the idea that you get cherry picked from obscurity and placed on high. And this does happen, if you know who Robert Rodriguez is, who did, what was his first movie was El Mariachi,
Mhm.
viewers, if you don't know, like he did this film for like $6,000. Some agent sees it, grabs him, and starts a bidding war over this film. Boom, it blows up. He goes to Sundance, wins Sundance. He meets Harvey Weinstein, da 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 da. Then he did Desperado and Spy Kids. And now everybody knows who he is now. But we are sold on that dream that that's how it can work. And you hang on to that. But for 98% of the people who work in film, that doesn't happen.
Maybe 99%.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
probably true.
How good was Desperado, though?
I love that movie when it's out. Robert Rodriguez was my hero. Like,
Yeah.
uh, But that's sort of what keeps a lot of us going is that, oh, maybe this will be the one. I'll make this little short and maybe,
Mhm.
you know.
I think that's the thing that keeps all creative people, like, pushing their art forward, right?
Mhm.
Like, the singer-songwriter, like, "This is gonna be the one, like, I feel really good about this song, I worked really hard on it,"
Yeah.
performed it, and then it's up to the luck and the distribution and, the timing and everything else, right? You just have no idea. That's the thing I love about it most is when you put like 8 episodes out into the world or you put like one film out into the world, like you just have no idea how people are going to respond to it.
Yeah.
And I love that fear and anxiety because it like keeps you sharp, right?
Yes, it does.
And it gives you something to like live for. Because you think about how many people in this world just get up and go to the same job every day, right? And like here we are taking 20-hour days for 50 bucks and bearing our soul and then putting it out in the universe and hoping people don't grab it, throw it on the ground and step on it.
Yeah. Which does happen
It does
sometimes.
happen sometimes.
But I you did your own show on your own, so like you had a vision, you had something you wanted to create, you had no idea if anyone was gonna buy it. Didn't you say it was hard to sell at first and then someone ended up picking it up and getting it out there?
Yeah, and I kept all my rejection letters. So like before, like obviously the way you make television is you come up with an idea, you find someone to find a broadcaster or streamer to pay for it, and then you go out and do it, and then you give it to them, and then they market it and put it out into the world, and everyone's happy. But I tried to do that, and no one wanted to do anything with me. Like I still have all my rejection letters from like Nat Geo, Discovery. Like these are back in like 2010 when I first started doing this, and I was just like, fuck it. Like, do I have to go to film? Like, do I have to spend 100 grand going to film school, or do I just spend 100 grand doing my own thing? And that was literally the decision I made. And I don't know if I like flipped a coin, but I was like, I'm not going to go to film school. I'm just going to make a documentary television series, like a film. Like it was 3 hours, like 6 30-minute episodes. So that was how I made like that decision. I was like, am I going to go to film school or am I just going to make a film? And if no one's going to pay it, pay me to do it, I'm just going to do it myself because like I just, and that, so the real question is like, is it more stressful when you have your own skin in the game, or is it more stressful when you have like executive producer overlords watching your every move because you're spending too much or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I find that the ones who usually do the best are the ones who take those risks like that.
Yeah.
Like, screw it. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't pay off, but sometimes it does. Like,
Mm.
and if not, sometimes it'll morph into something that you didn't see coming. Like, um, yeah. So,
There's no bad ending for putting stories and art into the world.
mhm,
Whoever pays for it. Like,
right.
if you like, I feel like I really do believe in karma and what goes around comes around. And if you make something and have your own skin in the game and you put it out into the world, something will come from that. It might not be immediate. It might not be what you expected. It might be 3 years down the road, but like that will, if you really believe in what you put out and you're proud of it,
Hmm.
that will lead to something. It always does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it often comes in ways you don't expect, but that's part of the embracing just kind of life as it comes to you. Like, because I think the key to unhappiness is holding on to your expectations. Because you read the books about, say, Robert Rodriguez.
Hmm.
Robert Rodriguez wrote a book called, I think it's called Rebel Without a Crew. I don't know if you've ever read it.
I haven't. That's a great title.
It's a Rebel Without a Crew. You probably still find it. And all of us at the time, independent filmmakers, read that book hoping that same thing would happen to us. But when it didn't, it made a lot of people angry because, like, I made a short film or I made a film for 10 grand. And I also did a film for that level.
Hmm.
I got into like one festival. Like, I think it was a festival in Iowa and I'd won, but who cares? Like,
Right.
I still have the trophy because it's one of my proudest achievements. But like, anyway, I forget my point where I was going with all that, but like, holding on to expectations.
Hmm.
The expectation that someone is going to discover you from obscurity and pull you out. Well, if that doesn't happen, but you might land this other little storytelling gig, is that, in fact, this is what happened to me after I did my first low budget kind of dumb movie. I then at that point could go, I'm a storyteller now. I've made a feature film. I'm not going to show it to anybody because it's not very good.
It's on IMDb.
It is on IMDb. But
Mm.
I took that into the corporate. So that's how I ended up doing what I do
Mm.
into the corporate space. I started telling corporations, yeah, I'm a feature film director and I can tell stories with your commercial or whatever.
Mhm.
And I started to pretend that the jobs I was working on, I just started to say, well, what if this was just one scene out of a bigger movie?
Mhm.
How would I approach this different? It's just a little how-to video about how a printing press works. What if this was part of my epic, you know, Indiana Jones thriller or whatever?
Oh, the printing press. Catch Me If You Can. Leo and Tom Hanks, right?
Something that how would Spielberg, right? So here's a great example. So I was looking at the movie Jurassic Park,
Mhm.
and the movie, the original movie from the 90s, I believe that came out.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
nice.
remember the scene where they all watch a little cartoon about how dinosaurs are made
Mhm.
with Mr. DNA? This is so funny to me because everybody remembers this scene.
Mhm.
This is the key scene to set up the movie on how they built dinosaurs. There's a mosquito, they get stuck in the sap, and then, we draw the blood out and make, da da da. That is a corporate film.
Mhm.
That's Spielberg. That's how Spielberg would make a corporate training film. It's exactly the kind of work that I was doing back then. So I looked at that and I'm like, well, if did he cuss and swear and get upset that he had to do this little corporate movie in the middle of Jurassic Park? Or did he go, how can I make this cool and memorable? And everybody remembers that scene.
Mhm.
Yes, they remember the dinosaurs, but that one little scene, how long ago was that? 20, 30 years ago?
20, 30 years ago, but they reused that scene in all the other Jurassic Park movies because it's like the core
Yeah.
starting point of every single film. So they bring it back too. But yeah, that was like 92 or 93 or something like that, wasn't it?
That's how memorable it was. So I started taking that energy into my work and it changed everything. Like it led to feature film projects. People would see a little short that I did for a corporation and go, you want to direct movies? Like that kind of thing did happen. So like, um, did did the Robert Rodriguez thing happen to me? No, but this other thing did because I just kind of went with it. And
We're still young.
we are still young. I like to believe that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I don't feel that way after a jiu-jitsu match, but it's anyway, yeah. So
That's wild though that you were able to like I think the hardest thing to do for young people who want to get into this space is like make a living, right? So how do you pay the rent, put food on the table, maybe or maybe not take care of a family while chasing your dream, right?
yeah.
And most people wait tables if you're an actor or whatever. If you're a director, you try doing commercials or do corporate work or things like that. Like we all have things that we're trying to keep on the level while we're still trying to like punch up. I
Yeah.
think that's like a really good way to describe it, maybe.
I think that's what it's probably the hardest thing to figure out as a filmmaker.
Mm.
If any of you want to go into film or do this, that's the most difficult thing to figure out. How do I stay in it? Because a lot of people, like I know a friend of mine, he drives and delivers marijuana as he's trying to, you know, work more full time in that and do movies and stuff like that. And that's hard because while you're doing a job like that, I mean, I have friends who do construction. I have friends who do like all these different things, drive for Uber, things like that. You're not getting better as a filmmaker while you're doing those jobs.
Mhm.
So how do you keep working somehow in that field, even if it's a wedding video? At least you're filming something
Mm.
so that while you build and write your scripts and get the other stuff going. That's the trick.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to do.
To not have the thing you're doing to survive be totally soul destroying.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. Exactly.
One of my buddies who's also been on the podcast, he's an actor, and it was really funny because he came out from Denver actually to LA and wanted to be in films and stuff like that, and ended up having a bit of success. He was on a TV show, then he did a movie, and things were coming in, and he was like really excited. But the thing that killed him was the time between each project was like 6 months. And he's like, I love being an actor, and like this is all I want to do. But it's like there's too much downtime. Like I want to act and I want to like work every day. So then he started doing social media, and now he's like a fucking social media guru. He's got
Oh,
millions of followers, makes way more money than anyone outside the A-list actors. And it's consistent, and he can control his own schedule. So for him, the scheduling and the downtime was driving him insane, like to the level of depression. And because he wanted to be creative, he had all this inside it, and he needed to come out. And social media gave him that kind of. Now he's not working on films and he's not doing television, but he's found his own space, and he can pay his rent, right? So he's so it's that's another kind of example of that.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of that's how you survive
Mm.
in film is by that kind of thing of like, all right, I'm doing it sometimes, but not enough. Okay, well, what do I have? I have an iPhone. I have a camera. Oh, there's this tool over here. Let me just try some stuff. That's how you survive.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's inspiring to hear those stories.
Mhm.
I mean, and the people, I think the ones that survive and do well are the ones that do just like that. Like, I mean, I heard the same story about Bill Hader, who he was on Saturday Night Live, had all this stuff, and then,
He's a fucking legend.
yeah, but his career stalled a little bit. I think he was writing a little bit, but it wasn't a lot of it. And he said to his agent, this career that I love is going to kill me because the anxiety between these projects and the insecurity it can drive into you
Mm.
because there's so much rejection. It's like, I think I love this industry, but it's going to kill me because of all of this. So he took those emotions and wrote a series out of it called
Barry.
And I love that.
And
Like,
Barry's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So you can look at it and go, I can totally see, because I mean, it's about a guy who loves acting, but the more he pursues it, the more likely it will kill him.
Well, it's pretty funny that he's an international assassin.
Yeah, right. Of course, that doesn't help, but yeah. So
No, it's true. Like, it's funny, like how again, it's just finding like no two paths are the same. Like that, I don't know anyone in television that's had a similar path to me. Like they've all found various levels of success or failure in totally different ways. And I think that's the thing that makes this life so interesting. If you can handle the anxiety and not knowing maybe when your next paycheck is going to come, that's the creative juice that I think fuels you.
I just was hanging out with a friend of mine just last week who he produces on a one of those Nat Geo shows,
Mhm.
but he'll only work for 6 months while the show is on, which is great. And a nice steady gig for 6 months. Like, I'm not like that. I'll have maybe a week or a day and then a month gig and then another 1 day gig. Like, it's all over the place. He told me, I I can't I can't deal with that kind of anxiety knowing. I'm like, yeah, but I couldn't deal with the anxiety of working for 6 months and then being off for another 6, hoping they renew it. Like, to me, you get used to, you're like, just you're Indiana Jones running ahead of the rolling boulder. You're just ahead of it, but you get kind of used to the thrill of like,
The adrenaline.
and if nothing's coming in, you make something up. You do what you did, where
Yeah.
you're just like, all right, screw it. I'm gonna go climb a mountain and film it and see if somebody wants to buy it. Like,
Yeah, because if you're a hardcore storyteller, there's nothing worse than a vacation. Like people are like, "Oh my god, you had 6 months off work. It must have been amazing." It's like, no, like you wake up every day like anxious, like fuck, like I need to tell a story. I need to produce something. I need to figure out a location. I need to get the crew ready. I need to figure out what cameras we're using today. After a couple years, that shit is so ingrained in you that if it doesn't happen on a daily basis, you start like shaking.
well, yeah, I think what that is, probably people in many industries could identify with that because it sounds like you're similar to me where I feel like I was designed to tell stories. And if I'm not living that purpose, it's it's like torture.
Mhm.
Like, if I'm just bagging groceries, I'm just dying. I tried to work a corporate job a few years. When I first moved to LA, the way I got here was I worked a little corporate job for about a year. It was the worst, longest year of my life. Like, some of the darkest, because I'm just not, I wasn't at all doing my purpose that I was. And I think if you're a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or any of those things, you can feel the same way if you're not doing those things. That's why a lot of people, when they retire and stop working, they start to age really quickly
Mhm.
because they suddenly have no purpose and it's zoop, it's gone. I think it's the same emotion, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry about.
And I never want to retire. Like I
Mhm.
got to tell stories till the day I die because like again, like yeah, the moment you stop or think retirement is the end, you're finished.
You might have to stop climbing mountains.
I've got another series I'm working on that's a little bit more like Anthony Bourdainish, where I go around drinking and eating with people.
That's much more sustainable, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I can actually we came up with this show called The Nomad, and it's kind of based on like back in the like I love Bourdain. He's to me was the best ever as a television host and producer but and writer. Fuck, he was such a good writer. But he um he had this he had this thing where he was just working like all the time, and he was traveling like 300 days a year, and filming. I mean, this was even before he'd had a CNN series. Like he had no reservations on Travel Channel. Like I
Yeah.
think they did like 150 episodes of that, and then he went out and did another 100 of Parts Unknown, which was incredible. But he talks about just suffering so much. Anytime there was downtime, and obviously he had addiction issues.
That's why. Yeah, because then what he turned to is jujitsu.
Yeah, and he was huge in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, jujitsu is like I do jujitsu as well, so that's what it is. It's like an addiction that it's a healthy addiction,
Hmm.
and he threw himself into it the same way he got hooked on drugs. He was at the gym at like 5 a.m. and he competed. He was in his I forget how old he was when he died, mid 50s.
63 when he died.
Yeah, and have you seen pictures of what he looked like?
He was ripped.
Yeah, that's because of how hard he threw himself into that sport.
Yeah.
It changed his life. Like he loved it.
His one of his wives was I think he's been married. I think he was married 2 or 3 times, but one of his wives was like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion.
Oh, really?
And I think that relationship got him into it, because I think you're right. Like he was working all the time, and I mean we're speculating here as to what a great man was doing in his spare time, but yeah, he started to do that in his downtime, and then I think that got him away from kind of
Yeah,
the demons.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, in that sport, I could go off. I could talk for hours about that sport, but it's super healthy for you mentally, like because you're in a community, and if you study anything about mental health and depression and stuff, being in a community is one of the strongest anecdotes for that. Like
Mhm.
in jujitsu, you're very close to your team and your training partners.
Mhm.
You're physically grappling and touching each other, so you get very close to who you're training with, and it's very euphoric.
Mhm.
Like I think it's healthy. Like, and as adults, I think, especially in America, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but I think it's easy to lose our sense of play.
Yeah, for sure.
Like we get caught up in the work all the time, and jujitsu and grappling arts like that is a sense of you feel like you're two animals like hit button horns and like messing around in the grass. And that's what it feels like. And you're laughing half the time and, oh, you got me in that joke. It's when is the last, if you don't do something like that, when was the last time you went out and just played? I think it's very easy to just, I think 3 months ago I went out and did some disc golf. Most of us just don't.
Mhm.
So most of us just will watch TV or something. So
Mhm.
I think it's really important to find that, whether it's pickleball or jujitsu or whatever. Like, I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I lived in like China, and there wasn't, there was a lot of people just like overworking, right? Because they were just
Mhm.
all chasing their dreams because they had this opportunity to advance their lives, and this whole boom that happened in China while I was there for 18 years, from like 2001 to 2018, was pretty remarkable. But you're right, like people just not taking enough time to play and enjoy life because they really like sensed the moment, and I think people just kind of grabbed onto it. And then Dubai, I mean, people just fucking go shopping all the time and
Oh, really?
hang out at the beach. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of athletes who actually live in Dubai. There's a few professional tennis players, a lot of professional golfers because it's tax free, so they can just fly to their tournaments and stuff like that from Dubai. So there's becoming like more professional athletes that live there and stuff. Because if you're working globally, like truly globally, it's a great hub to be in because you got the airline.
Interesting. How long were you there?
Well, that's why I moved there too, is because I was traveling globally all the time. I was there from like 2019 till I moved here, which was about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's just because I got to the point in 2018 and 2019 where I was traveling so much globally. Like, so for example, one season of Extreme Treks on BBC Earth, that was in one season we would film in like Russia, Iceland, Laos, Papua New Guinea, Bolivia, Argentina, Jordan, and Uganda. So that was kind
Wow.
of like the geographical distribution of one season. So, and getting to all those places in and out of Shanghai became a huge issue because the connections in and out of China, great, you can get to London or Frankfurt or LA or New York, But, getting to Argentina was a complete nightmare. Getting into parts of Africa was a complete nightmare. But you fly, like, with Emirates, and this is not a sponsor, but you fly with Emirates, they have the most direct flights to the most
Really?
destinations in the world. And I tell you, it carved, like, it easily saved me, like, 7 to 10 days of travel per year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because connecting is the worst, and then if you have to, like, connect and then sleep in a hotel and wake up the next day and get on another plane, whereas you can just fly direct everywhere, and that just, that made a huge difference. So then I was able to do more speaking events. So I would, in between, when I was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, my 2 weeks off, I would do speaking events, like corporate events, like, "Hey, there's this crazy guy, he climbs mountains," and, I talk about team leadership and, executing, creative visions in difficult situations and all this kind of stuff to, the senior vice presidents of some company in Las Vegas or Bali or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
It's funny. I was looking at your trailer for some of your work and
Mm.
where all the places you'd been, and the very first thought that came to my mind was, I wonder how big the spiders are there. Because I don't like bugs.
Bugs are terrible.
I hate spiders. And like you just said, you went to Papua New Guinea, and that I've heard that's for all the things that want to kill you.
Yeah.
That's a rough spot.
It is, yeah. Like, I remember we stayed at this little guest house. We did the Kokoda Trail in Papua New Guinea, which is very quite famous. It's like a rite of passage for Australians. So for those who don't know, in World War II, the Japanese were advancing south on Australia, and they wanted to take Papua New Guinea. And the Australians were like, "Fuck that! Like, there's no way we can give Papua New Guinea to the Japanese because they're just gonna put an airport there, and then just because it's very close, right? And they're just gonna bomb the shit out of Australia. So that's a no go." So the Australians mounted this fight to push the Japanese out of Papua New Guinea, and the entire battle with the Japanese almost happened on this trail called the Kokoda Trail, which is like a 120-mile trail that goes right across the north to south through the island. So a lot of Australian, like, teenagers and university kids or gap year kids, they do these trips to, like, pay their respects, but it's also like a rite of passage because it's really hard. But I saw some shit there that would blow your mind. Like, and then after we did that, we flew inland and we climbed Mount Wilhelm, which is the highest mountain in Papua New Guinea, highest mountain in Asia Pacific, and second highest mountain in Asia Pacific. And that is where I saw a spider that was twice the size of my hand. And I was like,
Hanging
"Fuck
on a
that."
tree or something?
No, he was in the guest house. The
Yeah,
spider was, yeah, he was in the house,
so it's like this big?
and the lady was like, "Oh, yeah," like, "Don't worry, like, he just eats bugs." Like it was some kind of fucking pet.
No.
I was like, "I can't sleep with that fucking thing in the house." Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
One of my camera guys, I think he set up one of his tents outside once he saw that. He's like, "I can't sleep with that." And I was like, he's just like, because we always travel with tents and sleeping bags and everything like that. So he just put his tent outside, grabbed his sleeping bag, and he's like, "At least I have my tent and my zipper." And I'm like,
Nothing's gonna
and I
go
can rest. Yeah.
I think I would have set it up in the room maybe,
Yeah.
so you could like, that would be terrible.
Yeah, brutal. But yeah, so that's kind of why I moved out to Dubai, and then it ended up being really lucky because then I wasn't in China during COVID,
Oh, yeah.
because I would have lost my mind for sure. Might not even be here. Like, that I couldn't imagine being locked down for like 4 years, like the people there were. So, but Dubai was pretty open and free. But then again, it's like, you have to be able to get on a plane and go places, right? And the United States kind of opened up a lot in like 2021, but even by 2022, there were still massive travel restrictions in Europe and
Mhm.
Asia, uh, and like, we just weren't able to get going again. Like, it was just like no one wants to have to take PCR tests, every day when you're on the side of a mountain, like, like, just ridiculous shit. Like, I'm out in nature, fuck off. Like,
Yeah.
if something in nature is gonna kill me, it's gonna kill me, but let me do my thing, right?
Well, and you're in nature with the same group, so
Yeah.
once you're all negative, I mean, who else are you gonna be seeing out there?
Well, yeah, those are the questions that no one had any answers for.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's
So let's draw back to Nashville. So you're doing music videos. So you did your first shoot. It was like 20 hours a day, $50 a day. So you're what, like a grip or some kind of assistant?
just the lowest level production assistant, yeah.
So then how did those steps progress then? Like, how did you get up to, like, directing your own music video? Because most people don't know this, but, like, a lot of directors end up doing features and television shows
Mhm.
because they've done great music work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know, in the film world, there's all these jobs. Everybody always asks, "What's a best boy?" These are all You can work in the camera department. You can work with grip and lighting. You can work in editing and post-production and visual effects and all that stuff. Well, I basically did all of those jobs. So I would take any job I could get wherever it landed. Like I didn't care. I just wanted to be on set filming. I did a lot of grip work. I did a lot of, because I wanted to be, I hate the idea of when I'm in a room and I don't know what this other department does, or like I didn't like talking to a cinematographer, not really understanding what's a 25 versus a 50,
Mm.
like as far as a lens for in photography speak. I didn't like that. Like I want to know it intimately so that I can talk to a cinematographer better. And so I would purposely just go and work in every department I could just so I'd understand how to hang a light, how to use a C stand, which is this stand that is used on film sets that on how to hang lights, flags, or any kind of anything.
Such a great way to start.
Yeah,
Mm.
it was really good for me. And a big thing that I ended up doing was in corporate world. Um, one of the first kinds of regular jobs I had was I would just be filming people walking on the stage, like at big corporate events. So like it'd be the guy giving the annual report at the AT&T convention, and I'm just panning left and then right as he's going back and forth. I hated it at the time, but I started to realize because it's thousands of hours of practice of just getting because when you're filming people, or photography is the same way, you're filming a person walking or eating or doing something. You fall into a kind of a rhythm and you start to anticipate where they're going to move next so you can keep them in the shot.
Mhm.
And that only comes with practice, that kind of instinctual, like, I think this guy's about to, yep, he's about to go right. You know,
Mhm.
to catch is in documentary work, you have to be able to like, oh, he reached down to open his bag, back up to his face or whatever.
Mhm.
You know, you have to understand that rhythm. I learned that through corporate stuff. So I started to be able to outshoot my film counterpart friends, like who were on film sets doing what I wanted to do, but they weren't getting as much hours as I was
Mm.
filming. So that was incredible practice. Plus the editing that came with it. I would do these big conventions. I would be shooting all day, like walking around the convention, shooting all day of everything that was happening and then cutting at night. That taught me, and I had to show something at the end of the week to show like a highlight video. That meant I'm getting I'm learning how to shoot quick and get the bite-sized piece that I need and then drop it in and to turn it over to an editor and understanding what an editor would need. It was the best training ever.
Mm.
I was miserable at the time. I complained a lot. But by the time I got to directing, I started directing little music videos, little things like that, which was super fun to finally, I mean, I'll never forget when I first got to direct my first thing.
Mhm. What was it?
It was an intro to it was for a music label. I think it was like a little corporate thing introducing the new artists of the year.
Mhm.
It was like a 5-minute little heist piece where they were all, I think they were out trying to gather CDs and something like that. It's
Mhm.
been so long. I wish I still had it. But after I was done, and it sucked. I wasn't great at it, but like I was so proud of it because I could finally call myself a director because I had gotten paid to direct something.
Mhm.
And that's where it began. And then just slowly started to work my way up until I did my first feature, got those out of the way. And then I got to a point in Nashville where I was like, all right, I think I've done everything I can do here. Cause it's not, you don't make movies in Nashville. There's not much else going there. It's a great town, but I had sort of tapped out everything I could do. Because I also did a lot of doc work. I flew all over the world shooting documentaries and stuff. But yeah, I reached a limit. So I didn't move to LA at that point because I was scared. I was still afraid.
The whole Rodney King thing still freaked you out?
Yeah, it still kind of did. The idea of the big city, I don't know anybody, and what do I do? And I was worried about like, what if I get there and have to wait tables again and start over? I didn't want to go back to the bottom.
Did you have a good reputation in Nashville? Like, people knew who you were and
Yeah.
people knew how, what you could do, and if
Yeah.
they came to you, you could help them?
Yeah, but there just wasn't opportunity.
Mhm.
So unless I want to do more music videos, and I just didn't want to do that.
Mhm.
Um, so I moved to Washington, Spokane, Washington, of all places.
That's the wrong direction.
No, it's like it's one of those you look back and you're like, "Huh, what was I doing?" So I ended up there a couple years. I did my second feature up there. which was good. I did some great commercial work up there, and then I moved down to Portland. I'm getting closer.
Yeah. Back home though.
I was back home. I wanted to be closer to family, and that was great. And then I finally, about 8 years ago, moved down to LA. And once I got to LA, everything changed.
Tell me how.
It was sort of like I always wanted to, I'm a storyteller, and I would move to these small towns, and there would be filmmakers there, but they liked their job, but they were happy doing commercials for Microsoft. And like, they kind of knew that's all they were going to do. There would be a little writers group, but it would all be just a bunch of people that they would do little indie films, and they just weren't, the writing wasn't great.
Hmm.
And I knew all these people, but they probably were never going to do anything with their writing.
Was it like an ambition issue? Like they were just happy kind of being the writer in the small town and they didn't have any bigger dreams?
I think so. There are a lot of that. And a lot of times I've noticed in smaller towns when you're filming movies there is, I'm the big fish in the little pond thing. And the idea of moving to a bigger pond is too terrifying. So they like being that big fish. So I wasn't satisfied with that. Once I got to LA, I'm suddenly surrounded by the best artists in the world. Like the very best live here. And that is, I felt like I finally found my people.
Mhm.
Like, you go to a coffee shop and all of a sudden you start talking to somebody and turns out they're a writer on some great TV show that you're a fan of. Like, what? And you become friends and you just, hey, will you read my script and give me some notes? And all of a sudden, like your level of quality of work goes way up because you're now competing for jobs with the best of the best. And it is great. Like, I love that kind of competition. And it has been, and any night of the week in LA, you can go to a screening of a movie or a TV show or something and listen to the director speak or the writers or the actors. Like,
I do that all the time.
it's so great.
It's my
Like,
entire social schedule. I don't go out unless I go to I'm a member of the Producers Guild, so I just go to everything.
yeah, yeah. See, that's a great way to do it. The way that I think when I first moved here, like within the first year, I went to a camera operator's little talk.
Mhm.
I had no idea what it was going to be. I'm like, nah, whatever. It cost me like $50. So I go in, I'm sitting down. The first guy that speaks is the inventor of the Steadicam.
Wow.
And I'm just like,
Game changer.
he shot like the kid in the big wheel
Mhm.
sequence for The Shining. He shot Rocky running up the stairs. He shot like the opening of Casino, or Goodfellas. The long legendary, all these legendary, like, and I'm 10 feet away from him and just like listening to how this guy invented this Steadicam.
Mhm.
Then the next guy that got up and talked, operates on like Fast and the Furious movies and all the Marvel films. And like, he's a big operator and he's so good at what he does. Actors request it. Like, that's the kind of stuff you get in LA. And I love it. I'm probably never going to leave.
It's accessible. That's the thing I
Yes.
think that most people don't get. Like people think like you come here and you're going to be isolated, and you might be isolated from actually working in the industry,
That's true.
but you're not going to be isolated from the people who are making cool shit.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. But you will end up friends with a lot of people that are working, and that's how careers are made. I mean, that's my second film, and I've got other films in the pipeline because I live here. Your opportunities just expand rapidly.
When you moved in from Portland, when you finally made the decision, like, did you have an agent here? Like, did you have a manager? Was there any kind of like support network for you?
I used to have a manager, but it just wasn't. It just kind of fills it out a little bit. So I knew I had a few friends, but not a lot of people. I didn't know a ton, but I just started with who I knew. It was, I don't know, 5 or 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
And and you probably do the same thing. I aggressively make friends. Like, my motto is he who dies with the most friends wins. Well, if I meet somebody, they want to chat and start, some sort of friendship, great. If it goes somewhere, that's the icing on top. If it doesn't, I have another friend.
Mhm.
There's no downside really.
That's why I started this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because people were writing me and like, hey, like, how do you do this or how do you do that? I'm like, just come on the podcast. Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
It is how every industry works, is who you know. So making lots of friends, having a nice, big, robust network of people that you know that's the way to do it. And it's so fun
Mhm.
because sometimes people surprise you with, wait, you did what? And that's what happens in LA. It's crazy.
How was your commercial work that you had done received in LA? Like when you started pitching around your portfolio, or sorry, when you were in Nashville, you'd already done your first feature. Which movie was that?
That was called The Human Trace.
Okay, and like when when you come to LA and you say you've already directed this film and stuff like that, like obviously people don't roll out the red carpet because that never happens. But
Yeah.
like was did that get you through some doors?
It did. This is the thing that totally shocked me because I always thought that not living here was a big weakness.
Hmm.
It was a weakness as far as my network. That part was true. But what I realized is a lot of people who moved here early on, like I should have done or felt like I should have done. I have a lot of friends who went to the best film schools like USC or something. And then they're working reality television or something. And that's it. They're just it's a job and it's not that satisfying. Or they're not even in the industry anymore. Like they'll work and then get so frustrated with the hit and miss of and I know so many people who've lived here for 20 plus years who've never done a feature or never directed for television. And all of a sudden I show up here and I'm like, wow, I've done like a couple movies and a bunch, like a big, robust reel that really helped. I was so surprised at how well received it was.
Hmm.
Um, and that did start opening up some doors. And
It's interesting.
yeah,
It's interesting because a lot of people think you have to come here right away to like make it. But I
mhm,
think when you come here young and you don't know what you're doing, the cost of living is so high that you end up doing a whole bunch of shit that you don't want to do. And
yeah,
then you just get stuck because then you buy a house or get married or blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, well, I can't quit my job. It's too much risk. And
yeah.
then you never fulfill that like dream. But if you can get away and isolate yourself or work in the same industry, but do it in a place that's like, where the costs are easier to manage or where
Yeah.
where the entry level or the barrier is lower to get in. And then you come to LA with a portfolio, 10 years later, then I think, you can kind of maybe get in at the level that you think you might be ready to produce that, right?
That's 100% true. It's yeah, and trying to say if you want to be a filmmaker and you want to direct a movie, it is so much easier to film it not in LA.
Mhm.
Like, cause it's like my first movie that was fairly low budget. I mean, we did like mob scenes. I did 2 underwater sequences. We did like car chases and we were in a park that had some roads and I didn't even have a stunt permit. There were just some paved roads in the park and I got a permit to film there. And some cops showed up in the middle of the night as we were filming. It's a night scene. And I'm like, oh crap, they're going to shut us down. I'm like, I have my permit. And they're like, oh, great. Yeah, it's cool. We just came to check it out. See what you're doing. Like, okay. The car's like doing big sliding and people are, mob running around. And they were like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt. And then they left. Like, that's what it's like making indie films outside of LA. You'd never be able to do that here.
Yeah.
Never. I had a friend who was trying to record audio, ambient audio in a parking garage. That's it.
In a parking garage.
Yeah. In LA. He's sitting in LA, parks his car, rolls the window down, sticks his microphone out the window, and he just needs to record like 2 minutes of audio. 30 seconds later, security guard, like, no, you don't have a permit. You got to leave. You can't record that here. It's like, that's LA.
I didn't know it was that tough.
It can be.
No.
So there are huge advantages to being here and there's big opportunities. You could end up being an assistant to some big director or something. Yes, that's great. But it can be very difficult to get work. Like the amount of writers I know who've never gotten anything made
Hmm.
is is crazy. Like it'd be a lot easier to do that not here. But it's a push and pull. It's yeah.
It's hard, like, 'cause I also talk to a lot of writers as well, and they're like, "You just have to keep writing all the time no matter what,"
Yeah.
and it's like, if you write something and you start pitching and it doesn't go, you gotta be deep into the next one, while you're trying to pitch that one, and sometimes, like, you go through 10 scripts before you sell one, and, like, that just seems insane to me, like,
Yeah.
but again, if you're not like, sure, you could do it in Spokane, Washington, and then just fly down and do, like, 1 week in LA and 3 weeks in Spokane or something like that, but then you're away all the time and the travel is kinda disrupting you, like, is it better just to be here and pay the high cost of living in LA or
Yeah. That's forever the question.
Mm.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that, and I think people who don't live here I don't think you have to live here to have a career because every city has some sort of industry attached to it. Like I lived in the Northwest, so if you live out in Seattle, for example, there's Microsoft and Amazon and some big companies are based up there. You'll probably be doing work for them, and you can make a great living doing that. Like making if that's what you like, great.
Mhm.
You could probably even make a little few indie films, but um, getting anything off the ground, especially if it needs to have a producer attached that may have some connections, it's so much more difficult. And it's not just coming in. A lot of people think they could just come down for the meeting,
Mhm.
but what you don't realize is when you live here, the meeting is probably at someone's birthday party or it's just you go out and play pickleball or racquetball or something and you just bump into somebody and you hit it off. Like that's where the connections are made.
Unplanned meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's not the meeting that the meeting happens at the end of a long relationship that's been building.
Mhm.
So that's where it's really extremely difficult. The best connections I made were things like that. Like usually somebody's birthday party I went to and just met Jim and suddenly we're best friends. And wait, you do what? You're looking for a movie about this? I have you want to read my, boom, 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 boom. Suddenly there's a movie.
It's funny you say that because like, I was living in Shanghai for a long time and making all these shows and traveling all around the world, and I thought I was doing some great stuff, so I thought like, "Okay, I'm gonna, like, start visiting LA once or twice a year and showing my stuff around, fly in for 4 or 5 days, line up a whole bunch of meetings and then leave again." And I thought it was quite cool that I could throw out like, "Oh, yeah, I just came back from Papua New Guinea. I'm in LA for a few days, would you like to meet? Yeah, I gotta go to Argentina after this and film another episode." And I did that for like 5 years and got nowhere. Like got because I wasn't meeting these people in like a social environment. Like I wasn't meeting them. It was just there was just too much you're here to pitch. I'm ready to listen to your pitch, and if it's not good, you're out. Like get out of here, right? Like it was just too much pressure. Because you do have to create an environment of like, like you said, like a person's birthday party, you can just catch up with someone and be like, "Oh, I got this idea. What do you think of this?" And, "Oh yeah, what if we do that?" Like those moments were never there. It was always just, there was always this like rough embattlement,
Yeah.
where,
Right. Right.
and pitch meetings are intense if you don't know that person and
Right.
don't have a relationship with that person. So it was funny because I got that entire strategy backwards.
Yeah, yeah. It's I did a couple of fan films. I've made a few fan films over the years, and if for listeners, if you don't know, fan film basically, if you're in love with a certain IP, like Star Wars or a video game, they're usually cool with you making a little short film around that IP as long as you don't make money on it. So like,
Well, I didn't know that.
yeah, so like the very first one I did is off the video game Splinter Cell. So I made a little short film called Splinter Cell. It's a great way to get people to see your work
Mhm.
because if you like Splinter Cell, you'll search online, and ours is called Splinter Cell Extraction if you want to check it out. Um,
And was that just a short film?
yeah, it was
Was
just a short, just out of love of the game, and it got a lot of views. It's a great way for people to see your work. Well, I did a Star Wars film before I moved here called The Force and the Fury. I shot it up in Oregon,
Mhm.
and it got quite a few views, like I don't know, several 100,000 views. When I got here, I did another one. But the difference between the 2, so the first one, I had a hard time even finding people to play in the leading roles, just schedules and stuff like that. I had to buy all the props myself, blah, blah, blah. To get here, I do another one. So this is a comparison to doing production inside and outside of LA.
Mhm.
The one in LA was called Kenobi. This was done before the Kenobi series was out. We actually were filming when they announced they were going to film the series for Kenobi. Well,
You were way ahead of that one.
yeah. We were on set when they announced, we were like, "What? They're making oh, man, everybody's gonna think we copied it."
Mm.
We were on set, we filmed, so remember the first one, I had a hard time casting it, and I had to pay for it all myself out of pocket. The second one, people showed up and were donating money to it
Mhm.
because we were living in LA. We got James Arnold Taylor to play the villain. Now, James Arnold Taylor, if you're a Star Wars fan, is the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in all the video games and cartoons.
Oh, really?
He's actually played Obi-Wan longer than any other actor. He was our villain. And another actor Jamie Costa played Obi-Wan. So they had scenes together. We got droid makers from LA who had worked on the Disney movies, who gave us droids to use in the film.
Like props, like
Yeah,
actual droids.
actual moving, like an R2 unit.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
yeah, we had guys that, and one brought one of those speeders, like a perfect replica of like the speeder that Luke Skywalker
Hmm.
drives around. So we had all of this stuff. We had, and it because of that, because of living here, that was because of living here. All these people came in to support the film, and some of them did it for free, donated their time and all these props. And because of that, that film in the first 24 hours got over 1 million views.
Oh my God.
Bang! And I don't know, it's up to 7, 8 million now. So like, that's the difference to production inside and outside. So like the first one, I think Force and the Fury has 300,000 views even to this point. This Kenobi, it's like 7, 8 million.
Yeah.
So like, yes, you can do it outside of LA. Much harder,
Mhm.
like the actual production piece and then getting anyone to see it. Cause that's the other part. You have to get people to see it and embrace it and push your work.
Mm.
So that's a big difference I've seen. It happened with my movie too.
Yeah. Well, like you said, doing things in LA, like you had so many people reach out and help, right? And then of course when it comes out, they all want to watch it and then they all want to share. It's like, oh, I donated this guy some money. Oh, this guy's using the speeder I had. Like, check it out. Like, and then it gets shared around, and then that's the way it works.
Yeah.
You
Our
know?
stunt coordinator actually worked on Return of the Jedi
Oh, did he?
in the stunt department. Like he helped when Boba Fett goes flying and he bounces off when he falls into the, I think, Sarlacc pit.
Mm-hmm.
And he flies it when he bounces off this floating ship. He worked on the team that helped that guy fly, this Boba Fett stunt double. So it's like, that's what you get in LA. You get these amazing resources. Yeah. So it's worth it. You just have to understand the yin and yang of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to figure out how to make stuff, and then hard to figure out, to get eyeballs on it, isn't it? It's just
Two
brutal.
different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, you've been through it. So yeah,
It's rough because it doesn't matter how good your idea is, if you make something beautiful in a bubble, and then no one gets to put eyes on it, you don't, it's not very fulfilling. Like, you want people to see what you create, you want people to respond to it.
I just made $100,000 home movie. My mom loves it.
Oh shit. Yeah. I got divorced too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's very real. That happens a lot. It
Yeah.
happens to a lot of people. So that's where being around here can help you a lot, because the right producer, agent, manager, like in your case, you said it was an agent that helped you, right? Get your first show sold.
Distribution agent.
Yes.
Yeah.
That connection, boom, is what really pushed you.
Well, television's a bit of an easier gambit to run because, and I'll tell you why. It's all about volume. So like, if I realized this right away, like if I made one great episode of a TV show, no one will buy it because they're like, what the fuck is this? Like, make a movie or give me multiple episodes. So then I started figuring out, and then I was like, well, how many episodes? And they're like, 8's a good number. And I'm like, okay, 8. So then I just went out and started making 8 episodes of everything. And then it all sold. And then,
Wow.
and then when they buy season 1, and then a year later you have season 2 ready, they buy season 2. And then we have season 3 ready, they buy season 3. And then season 1 is up for renewal because you're on like 3-year distribution contract. So, and then they're like, oh yeah, season 1, yeah, we want to keep all this together. And then season 4, and then season 2 has to be renewed, and season 1 just got renewed, and you just keep it in the ecosystem. And as long as you're rating, they'll keep taking it. So you basically create this little ecosystem where, as long as you keep making the stuff that's kind of already successful, they just keep upping it, and the acquisition fees, they keep reacquiring it. So it ends up being, you build this little like a nest for yourself. It's quite fun.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So what are you up to, these days in LA? Like, what's keeping you busy?
Well, yeah, I just finished another feature. It was released theatrically last summer by Lionsgate, which was really amazing. It's actually, according to Rotten Tomatoes, one of the highest rated films of the year. It's called The Abandon. It is going to be available you can rent it right now on Amazon and Apple.
Mm-hmm.
And it is coming out on Paramount Plus, just regular streaming on Paramount Plus in March. So
that's great.
that's been really, really cool. It was quite a journey to put it together. It's a sci-fi thriller. But yeah, and then the company that has that, they're talking to me about doing some other projects. There's quite a few projects in development. I'm looking at maybe going into production here in March on another
Mhm.
fun little project. But yeah,
Another feature?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, a lot of same commercial corporate kind of stuff. I do. That's my bread and butter. I do quite a bit of that, and like especially the narrative storytelling stuff we were talking about at the beginning. Like I do a lot of that kind of thing. So
Are you writing the scripts also for your own features, or you
all
work?
of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last one I did not. I found the script, but I worked with him to do a lot of rewrites and stuff. So
Walk me through this. So, like, the abandoned, like you're sitting around and looking for projects, or how did this come to you? Like, walk me through the anatomy of how this gets out into the world.
yeah, so on that one, I went to the Austin Film Festival, the Austin Screenwriter Film Festival. I don't know if you've ever been, but if you're a screenwriter, it's one of the best festivals in the world.
What makes it such a
It's just designed for writers, and it's close enough to LA where a lot of LA people will fly out there. So when you're at this thing, which is multiple days, there's panels happening all day, and you're able to go like they had a panel when I was there for a show called Shut Eye. I don't think this show lasted very long, but the writers on the show were all from Breaking Bad, Mad Men, X Files,
all the
they're
hits?
like, and there's like 50 people in the audience.
Mhm.
Like I went to one. It was all about how to write a story in a small space, and it had the writer. Remember this movie Phone Booth?
Yeah, I remember Phone Booth with
Yeah.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Colin Farrell. So the writer of Phone Booth was there. The writer of Buried, remember that
yeah.
movie?
With Ryan
Was
Reynolds. Yeah.
was in a coffin.
Mhm.
So the writer Buried was there. I don't know, I'm fans of all these movies. The writer of Hard Candy was there, and a bunch of other people. On the writer of Devil, that was a M. Night Shyamalan produced film. I don't
Mhm.
remember the director, but it's all a bunch of characters stuck in an elevator. So it was how to tell a story in a confined space. One of those writers was named Dwayne Worrell, and he had written a movie called The Wall. It was directed by Doug Liman, who did The Bourne Identity and
Mhm.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, starring John Cena and Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yep.
On Amazon, about a soldier pinned down behind a little wall. Like the whole movie is just stuck. Well, I'm in Austin. I'm amazed. I'm blown away by this panel. I meet him afterwards. We became fast friends. And of course, he lives in LA. So I was able to meet up with him afterwards in LA. He passed me this script called The Abandoned. And the premise of it is a soldier who's in the middle of a firefight in Iraq. He gets hit with a blinding light and he wakes up in this room that's 20 feet square, no doors, no windows. He has all his soldier gear with him. He has no idea how he got there. And then everything starts acting weird. Gravity starts changing and acting strange. Writing starts appearing on the wall. And the only person he can talk to is someone who calls him on his sat phone saying they are trapped in an identical room. So it's a really cool, it was one of the only scripts I've ever read where I couldn't put it down until I finished it. Cause it was just every time I thought I knew what was happening,
Mhm.
it would change. It was so good. It's such a good script. So I worked with him,
Did that come out of any other IP, or did that just come out of his brain?
just his brain. It was a script he had written. Yeah, it was so cool. So from there, I was like, I've got to find a way to get this made. And the next month, I met at some party. I met a couple producers, shopped it to them, and they said, "This is fantastic. Well, let's greenlight it." So they went immediately, boom, boom, boom. It happened super quick.
Mhm.
Um, and
What were your locations for filming?
it was weirdly enough, we were going to film in LA, but the location that we needed a gigantic. We actually had a gimbal set that would turn
Mhm.
because we had to do anti-gravity stuff. We couldn't find a place big enough for our budget here. So we shot in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, fuck, that's hilarious.
So, but we didn't need much because essentially the movie is one guy in a room.
Mhm.
So we just needed a giant set to pull it off with a lot of effects. So it was just much cheaper. We could find a huge warehouse that was way bigger than what we needed up there.
Mhm.
So, but then all the post and everything was done here.
Right. And then how long did it take to shoot that?
I think we shot the whole thing in 3 weeks.
That's incredible. Whole feature.
Yeah. Because it was one guy in a room. So it wasn't too complicated. But the story is what held it together.
Yeah.
Um,
How'd you find the actor? Who is the actor?
He was someone that was brought to me by the producers.
Okay.
So it's someone they wanted to work with, and they said, we've been looking for a vehicle for him, and so they gave him to me. So it's really fun to work with him, and um, came together super well. Like I'm very, very, very proud of this one. Like
Mhm.
it's a different kind of film. Like if you're into thinking movies and like puzzles and stuff, like this film is you'd like it.
Scratches that itch.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a Fast and the Furious movie, with racing. It's nothing like that. It's a very intimate, claustrophobic thriller,
That's epic.
like Buried.
Okay. I can't wait. I got Paramount Plus, so I'll definitely catch that when it comes out. Yeah.
March.
So how did so okay, so you met the screenwriter in Austin, you came back to LA, you read it, you found a couple producers to put in some money. When did Lionsgate come in?
That was after it was completed, and we got into the Mammoth Film Festival, and there was someone from Lionsgate there who saw it and loved it and picked it up right away.
Wow, that's epic.
Yeah, it was, and again, going back to LA versus not LA, that happened because of LA. Because like these are all people that were here. The producers were very connected. They were able to get us into some high-end festivals. That was one of them. And Lionsgate was there looking for films. Boom. They loved it.
It's funny though, like, I mean, were you pitching it around in LA before? Like, because people out there don't know how movies are made, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm thinking like, hey, I just finished this film, Spokane, Washington, got this set, 3 weeks out there, came back, did post production. How long did post last?
It took about a year to put it together because there was a lot of visual effects,
Mhm.
because there was a lot of anti-gravity and we made him fly and float and tumble all around. So about a year to get
Yeah.
that done.
And then like so then you've got a screener, right? So then like, weren't you making the rounds to all the studios here in LA?
No, actually, I could have tried that with the script, but as of basically an unknown director,
Mhm.
if I had just taken it to Lionsgate, they would have said, "Thanks for the script. Bye." They're not going to let me direct it. So once it was done, we sent it to everyone we had contact with. No luck. It wasn't until it played in front of an audience
That
that,
was the game changer.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the Lionsgate executive was just sitting in the audience and just loved it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
that's incredible. Like that, I mean, what a great story.
yeah, it was it's what you were it was the closest thing I've gotten to that Robert Rodriguez fairy tale
Mhm.
of getting picked and placed on high.
Mhm.
Now it's it didn't make millions of dollars at the theater, but it still did very well. And we got theatrical. Like in today's day and age, to get a theatrical release is unheard of. So
You need a Marvel superhero if you want a theatrical release.
exactly, because yeah, those big tentpole movies suck up all the theater space, so it's harder to get things in. So that was super cool.
Mhm.
Like, and they loved it. Like, it's got a 92% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's done extremely well.
And like, do you think there will be other opportunities to work with Lionsgate again in the future?
Yeah, so now I have an open door with them because we have a relationship, and yeah, so
How important is that though? Having that open door relationship where you get that first, kind of hit or first film with one partner and everyone makes a little money and everyone feels good about it. And then maybe you get to do another.
yeah, well, it's probably the same for television where once you know the people, then pitching new things, you get that relationship going.
Mhm.
That's much, much easier.
So the next film you want to work on is a script that you produced yourself.
Uh, well, there's multiple ones.
How many irons in the fire do you have right now? I can tell you I've got five. I've got five shows that I'm working on right now, three different titles, so three different genres, but all stuff I've done before. And, two of them have two different seasons and two different geographic locations, but I'm pitching like five things at this moment. So how many irons in the fire do you have?
Oh man, I'd have to count them up. But off the top of my head, I can think of about 6 or 8, somewhere in that ballpark that are all in different stages of development.
And how important is that? Like, do you find so again, people out there are going to be like, no, you should just find one thing that you're passionate about and just wait until you push it through no matter what. But that I don't think it's the way it works.
Yeah. The way I see it is it's like you're trying to hit a target. There's a target that's 20 feet away from you with a bullseye in it.
Yeah.
Now you could get your pistol and put one bullet in there and try to like aim as best you can with that one bullet and hope it hits. Or I like to think of it like it's a shotgun shell, and the more little pellets I put in there, the more luck I'm gonna get at hitting that target because there's so much luck involved. So if I can pack that thing up with a lot of pellets, I have a pretty high chance of something getting through.
I had a great conversation with someone here on the podcast the other day, and they were telling me about this philosophy that they read about many years ago, and it's called like the surface area of luck. And and I really like this because everything that happens in Hollywood, you know, you have to be good, you have to be diligent, you have to hustle, but you also have to be lucky. And he was saying like anything that I can do to increase my surface area of luck,
Mm,
because you know he wants to have as big a zone around him as possible where if someone comes into it, he
yeah,
can be lucky. And I found that just fucking brilliant.
that's exactly right. Well, that's what I was saying before about the aggressively increasing your network
Hmm.
of like the more people you know, the more chance you have of, something you're in the right room and they're like, we're looking for someone to do XYZ. I know how to do XYZ, that's how it works. And it's not just Hollywood. I think all industries work like that.
When you're deal making, for sure.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're trying to get your tire company off the ground and you don't know where to buy rubber from, like need investors or need a factory. Like you got to know a lot of people to pull these things off.
I've been to some rubber plantations in Brazil. I can point you in the right direction. Yeah.
That's,
I actually, I even had grabbed one of those knives that they use and like carved out one of the rubber trees and had the rubber actually coming out. So
is it like a liquid, like a paste kind?
yeah, it's a liquid. Yeah, it's a liquid, and then I think they when they cool it down, it becomes a solid. But when it first comes out of the tree, it's liquid. It looks like
Mm,
sap. Actually, it's exactly like sap. Like if you've ever seen like maple syrup being made
mm,
from a sap tree, like it's
interesting.
exactly the same. Yeah, except it's
Huh.
black.
I learned black sap. No one, yeah,
Yeah.
something I learned today.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, because I made this show called Tough Rides Brazil, where I rode a motorcycle all the way around Brazil for 60 days. It was about 12,000 miles, and yeah, like half of it I was in the middle of the Amazon for half of the shoot.
Man,
And we stayed one night. We stayed with this villager, and he was a rubber producer, so he
well,
taught me how to do it. And he also, you know, kills crocodiles with his bare hand and had a big crocodile tooth on his necklace. And this guy was like the real deal.
jeez,
Yeah.
there's some big bugs there too.
Yeah, Brazil, don't go to, yeah, snakes in the, oh my God, because it's so wet and there's
Mhm.
just sitting water everywhere. It was, going through the Amazon was one of the loneliest things I've ever felt. Because the whole thing I love about the show is I love being able to like, there's a moment in every episode, and we don't really make a big deal of it on the show, but there's a moment in every episode where I stand around with my guys and I'm like, we're really fucking out there. Like, no one's coming for us. Like, we're gone,
Hope the
gone.
car doesn't break down. Yeah.
Yeah. Or we get stuck in mud. Like, so we were on this road called the BR-319 in Brazil, and it runs from Manaus down to Portobello, and it's right through like the deepest part of the Amazon. And but the Brazilian military built the road in like 1965 and then didn't do anything to it. So the jungle has like reclaimed it.
Oh,
And there's 120 broken, semi-broken bridges that go across like rivers and streams, and we had to drive across them and ride the motorcycle across them because I was on the bike and then the guys were in the SUV behind me. But it was about 1,000 miles of this road, this one lane road through the jungle, no towns, no villages, no electricity, no running
a
water.
1,000 miles.
And we got, and then like, you know, so the first day you're like, yeah, we're in it. Like, it's great, right? It's day two. It's like, okay, yeah, we're getting there. And then you start reaching that point where it's like, well, you can't go back. And going forward is like really hard. And so one, like they had these, they were bouncing these, they had these, not like satellite dishes, but they had something built in the middle of the jungle. At the road also was used to build these. They were bouncing like cellular networks across the jungle, but they weren't manned. So it was like a television tower in the middle of the jungle, but they were every 40 miles along this 1,000-mile road. So, and that was where we were going to camp every night. So they had the beams and they had the structure going up, so we could park the car close to the structure, hang a hammock, cook a little, eat, have a few drinks, go to bed, wake up the next day, same. But the hard thing is like if you didn't make it to the 40-mile point, you know, then you were camping in the jungle, which is terrifying and really dangerous if you don't have that right equipment or that right, you know, experience. And we didn't. So So, sometimes you would get to one of these towers at 10 a.m. You'd leave at 8 and get to the next tower in just 2 hours, and you'd be like, "Oh, should we stay?" Like, and then you'd be like, "No, it's 10, it's too early." But then you wouldn't hit the next one till like 6 p.m. when it was already dark, because that next 40 miles took you 8 hours.
Mhm.
But the first 40 miles took you 2 hours. And there was no way to gauge how far you could get. Like, one day we only did 40 miles. We only went from one to the other in a 12-hour day of riding. Like, we left at sunrise and we got in at sunset, and we only went 40 miles. So having to make those decisions every day of like, do we stop at this one? Do we keep going? Like, what do the guys think? Like, having to build that camaraderie and that energy around making these decisions and making the right decision and making sure everyone feels like they have something they can express their own feelings about it, and that I was listening, like, because it was dangerous. And like we were, but there was one time where it was like 4 p.m. and we got to one of these towers, and I was like, anyone want to go for it? Like, it'll be, be dusk in 2 hours, and stuff like that. And we all just kind of looked at each other, and silence. And we were like right in the middle of the highway, 500 miles that way, 500 miles. And we were just like, we're in the middle of fucking nowhere. And that hits you so hard. And I think if we find that moment in every episode, then we've made a good episode.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's brave, and you don't know if the bridge is gonna be out.
No, and they bend, yeah, like, because the weight of the SUV was, because we carried our own drinking water, and we didn't know, if 1,000 miles was gonna take us 2 days or 10 days, right? So we had to go with 10 days worth of food, 10 days worth of water, drinking water, 10 days worth of petrol for the motorcycle, and 10 days worth of diesel for the car.
Wow.
So all that was in the back of the SUV, going over all these like crinkling bridges, like they were on the verge of collapse. So
Man, that's stressful.
every time we went over a bridge, my heart fucking stopped.
You're fine on the motorcycle. You're like, okay, I'm gonna, guys.
The worst feeling in the world was getting across the bridge and then looking in my rearview mirror, watching them come across, and just be like, "Fuck! I hope that bridge holds."
That's cool. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it was fun.
I gotta watch that episode now.
Yeah, I'll send you some links after. But it was good.
I'd love to see that. That sounds awesome.
So how do you said you have 6 or 8 irons in the fire?
Mhm.
Where do you find your collaborators? Like, are you going back to the same writers? Are you constantly looking for new writers to work with different ideas or different energies? If you're writing yourself, like, I'm just curious, like, how big your network is of tapping people around you to get
Mhm.
these kind of projects into these 6 or 8 pipelines.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do have a group that I like working with for sure, but filmmaking by its nature is a collaborative art, and you're always working with new teams no matter what. Like, for a long time I had like one DP cinematographer that I love to work with, but as projects got bigger and more frequent, I just couldn't. The schedules were all over the place. So now I have like 10 DPs that I like to work with, and I just plug each one in depending on, this guy's really good at doc stuff, but I like this guy's narrative edge. So I'll mix and match.
And sorry to interrupt you. You can see that? You can see those differences in their
Yeah.
footage?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And especially like sometimes it's a personality thing. Like, well, I've got this client, it's kind of hard to work with, but I think that guy will have a better
Mhm.
temperament to deal with this kind of clientele, that kind of thing. So sometimes it's that. Um, so I do have a core team. Like, I have a producer that I work with and a couple of writers that I like to work with, but it's like scattering leaves. Every time you're doing a project, all these different, I hope that the makeup artist I like can make it, but she might be booked on something. So I'll have to work with a new person. So it's constantly changing. Writers are the same way. So sometimes a writer will come to me and we'll write together on something.
Mhm.
Um, so I do have a core team, but it tends to always shift around,
Mhm.
which I like that though. I like working with different energies, different people. I like the collaborativeness of the storytelling that's fun to me.
Yeah. It's amazing, like, the way you've described it to me today, like, just how flexible you have
Mhm.
to be with everything just to get stuff done.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like, you might have to work with your fourth favorite makeup person because the other 3 are gone, and it's just like, okay, this is the team, this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
and then it's full steam ahead for 1 month or whatever, and then
You're good.
hey, we're gonna find out.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
That
No, that's epic, man. So, I mean, like, so are you pumped up? Are you positive for
I
2025?
am. I am. Because, if anyone watching is kept up with the industry, there's been some strikes. I feel like we haven't really gotten back on our feet since the pandemic.
Everyone says that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I've been able to work and stay busy, but still, like, it's just been tough. And then the strikes happening, I guess it was over a year ago, but 9 months of the whole industry being shut down. And then last year, there was some other stuff. This year, I think I'm already seeing things starting to pick up.
Mhm.
I'm already getting calls for different things. So, um, I am very hopeful for
Right.
sure.
Does all the struggles with all the studios and stuff like that worry you at all? Like, like the craziness in the news, like Paramount's getting sold to the what's the Ellisons?
Oh, is it? You know, the industry is in such a weird spot because a lot of that's streaming,
Mhm.
because streaming is just trying to figure out what it is. And you're seeing a trend where a lot of these studios are not owned by filmmakers anymore. They're owned by data tech companies out of the Bay Area. And they're looking at entertainment like data companies and tech companies. So it's a different mindset and they're kind of fighting. Plus, throw AI into it and how AI is disrupting. Like AI is amazing with some of the stuff it will do, but it's also like for the VFX people, I fear what they're going to be up against with AI because it can do everything.
Animators might be done.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's a scary thing. So there's a lot of scary things, but there's also a lot of positive things. I try not to, there's a lot of it that's out of my control though. So I try not to stress about a lot of that. Try to keep my head on straight and just keep doing the work, keep writing, keep meeting all the people that I can. And it's worked out well for me so far. So yeah, trying to keep positive.
You just got to be easygoing and likable, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like you got to do good shit, but everyone does. Like anyone here who's reached a certain level does good shit, and then after that, it's just like work hard, be likable.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. To be a nice guy. How hard is that?
It can be so hard, especially in this town.
Well, yeah, that's true.
How have you felt? Like I had a television executive tell me this the other day, and I wanted to bounce this off you. So from 2015 to 2020. A television executive, for example, would get a $10 million budget and then be asked to allocate it into the hands of 10 different directors,
Mm.
$1 million a project. And then that producer, executive producer at the television broadcast network would get, 10 stories coming back to them, and then they broadcast them and then a couple hit, a couple miss and blah, 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 blah. And now everything's just being compacted into like one big event. Like instead of spending 10 million on 10 projects, they're spending 10 million on one project. And the entire kind of ecosystem is just being crushed into these singular massive events that everyone's just taking huge gambles on. And it's funny because for me, I've had a lot of difficulty getting back into this space because of that, because I used to be one of the 10, but I'm not one of the one. So
Wow.
so my kind of return into being active the way I was before has been a little bit slower. And it's kind of because of this. And I've talked to television executive after television executive, and they've been telling me the same thing. I'm just wondering if you see that in filmmaking at all.
I do think that I think that has happened. I think that's a result of I just actually heard a podcast this morning. Streamers are taking over, right? So they've Netflix and Amazon and they've taken over. And when they first were around, they were this slippery beast and no one really knew what it was. I mean, in fact, that's part of what the strikes were over because when Netflix first came around, it was considered new media, which is like YouTube. So that's why the residuals and stuff that actors were paid were completely skewed.
Hmm.
Now it's becoming more of an industry, and Wall Street was benefiting. The way they would reward streamers was because of subscription based, how many subscribers they had, not necessarily how much profit they were making
Hmm.
or views they were getting. So now they've switched that to because they started sending them gobs and gobs of money. That's why they were pumping out all this content, which the pandemic skewed those numbers
Hmm.
because everyone was at home watching TV. Now they're starting to reward them for content. or views,
Mhm.
right? Just like movie ticket sales, which means it's a reality check. They have to start squeezing down, how much they're pumping out and how big the budgets are. So I think that's what you're seeing. That's what I'm seeing too. It's like this big compression of content in general is being pushed way down.
So the streamers now are paying royalties to artists
That
based on viewership.
I that's what the strikes were about. Yeah, I think so. They did make some good progress with that.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. Well, that's great then, because I know that was always a big issue. Because again, like people out there don't know, like you make a movie and then you don't make a movie for 6 months, and if you don't have residuals and royalties coming out of your creative work, then you go hungry. Like,
That's right.
and then if you're successful enough, you can live off of those royalties, and then that's kind of how the game is played. Like this
Mhm.
in Beverly Hills is entirely built on film and television and music royalties.
Yeah, I know actors on big hit TV shows where the shows were acquired by Netflix and they didn't see a dime. And
That's
these are like
insane.
top, like some of the top viewed shows on Netflix that they would grab and air. Actors aren't seeing a dime, or the directors or writers. That's the kind of stuff that has changed. So, and also I think a combination as far as the compression of the industry, when you have the Bay Area, they're going, well, why do you need 10 writers? Why can't we do it with two? And they're sort of trying to like run it like a tech company as opposed to an entertainment company. So you're seeing it's just this weird Wild West time right now. So I think it blew up because of pandemic, because everyone was watching TV and now it's going,
Yeah. You need to have 10 writers. A couple guys got to be high, a couple people have to be drunk, a couple guys got to be going through a divorce or a woman going through divorce, someone's got to be pregnant. Like you need to have all the angles covered in the writers room so you can play all these stories from, you got to see it 360 degrees.
get all interesting. Yeah. So yeah, it's a weird time, but I'm still optimistic. I think it'll level out.
Mhm.
We're witnessing a time right now that's like the invented, like the computer revolution in the 80s, when the computer started coming a thing. It was a radical change. I mean, it's like the invention of the printing press with AI, what it can do, like
Mhm.
it's changing everything. So I think it's kind of a cool time to be alive to see. Hopefully there'll be jobs at the end of it.
Hopefully.
I think things will change. There might be, we might have to learn some new skills to be relevant. Like when robotics arrived in the manufacturing industry, a lot of people lost work. But the people who stayed were the ones who learned how to run the robots.
Mhm.
That's what we're seeing.
We're all gonna have to learn and be fluent with the language of how to gear AI to get it to do what we want it to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because it still needs someone to punch the buttons in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one person instead of 10.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying how that's playing out, but it's great to hear that you've got a few irons in the fire and you're kind of pumped up and ready to go for 2025.
Love it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about your jujitsu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's finish off with your jujitsu. So you started doing it. Why?
I'm not a fighter. I've never done boxing, wrestling, nothing like that. In fact, when it came to any conflict at all, I was pretty scared of it. And anytime there was
You were scared of LA.
I was scared of LA. So I grew up very sheltered and very like afraid of the whole world. And like anytime I'd be at a bus stop or, somebody looked like they wanted to start a fight, I would be in a panic mode.
Hmm.
And I really hated that, just not knowing how to defend myself. And jujitsu came up. Someone told me that it's one of the best martial arts for self-defense because most fights that happen in the street end up on the ground.
Hmm.
Um, and jujitsu, if you don't know anything about it, is a grappling art. So it's wrestling, and there's no striking involved. It's all wrestling.
Hmm.
Um,
Which I love, by the way, because I can't stand watching other people hit each other like that. I've never been hit like that, and watching it is like I can't watch MMA and I can't even watch boxing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like that for a long time. I like it now.
And I'm fucking full on.
Yeah, but so initially it started for I wanted to learn some self-defense just to learn how to I just want to know how to, if somebody, an intruder comes into my home, what do I do?
And your guns don't work because we live in the United States.
That's right. Uh, just that sense of powerlessness that you feel when you don't know how to defend yourself yeah. So I wanted that, but I also wanted to find some sport that I could do with my wife, because jiu-jitsu is one of the few martial arts, or one of the only, that you could actually do, men and women can do together and can actually roll, because it's all about leverage, and how a lot of it's framed as what can a little person do to a big person.
Mhm.
And it's pretty fun. Like, I'm a middle-aged guy, and I'm often rolling with guys in their 20s, and I can, if they're a newer belt, I can often do whatever I want
Mhm.
to them. That's like a pretty empowering feeling. And my wife and I started doing it together, and it was fantastic. Um, then I started to discover the value. Number one, it was the community aspect that I talked about before, where I suddenly found myself in this really cool community of people who were learning a skill. A lot of people had learned it in middle age, started late in life because they wanted to, for the same reasons as me. So it's this very positive thing. And this sense of play, like I said before, it was so fun to like roll and wrestle around with people and try to get, like, the camaraderie that I experienced was amazing. It was euphoric. And
It's very juvenile, like, because we all have stories about wrestling on the
yeah,
playground or wrestling with our siblings or our friends, in the backyard or on the grass in front of the house or whatever when we were young, and we've all been there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So from a mental health standpoint, especially, I've struggled with anxiety and depression, like this really helped. Like if I ever feel frustrated, especially with work, as stressful as our jobs can be, I go there, I'm not thinking about any of that.
Mhm.
On a treadmill, if you're on a treadmill just running, you're going to be thinking about all the crap that's going on. I'm not, when I'm rolling with somebody, I'm thinking, I can't let this fool choke me. Like, I'm thinking about that.
You
So
get out of your own head.
yeah, it's just a great endorphin dump. So you can get out of that. And physically, like, I'm in the best shape of my life right now, like, because of all this. So it really, very quickly, within a year, I felt this incredible sense of, like, I got my power back.
Mhm.
Like, and that I experienced that actually the night before I started work on The Abandoned, my last feature. I was staying at a friend's house. My wife and I are upstairs, and I hear this crash in the middle of the night. I get up, go downstairs in my pajamas. I walk around the corner, and there's a guy standing in the kitchen.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And a guy you didn't know.
Didn't know. He had walked in the kitchen door, and he was standing kind of hunched like this. I thought he was about to rush me. And I had only been taking jujitsu for about a year at that point. And any other time up into my life before that, I would have panicked, grabbed a knife or whatever. I don't know.
Mhm. What do you do? Like, home intrusion is the worst.
It, so I'll spoil the ending, and nothing actually happened. This guy was drunk and wandered into the wrong house and didn't know it. Now I didn't know this. It's 3 in the morning.
In the US, that gets you shot.
Yeah. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't, the way he was standing was aggressive.
Mhm.
Like, I took it to mean this guy's about to rush me. But the way I felt in the moment, I just said, I basically kept him at the door, like, what's going on, man? What's going on? Told my wife, go wake up the owners of the house, get them down here. Let's get some police. I was able to keep him back at the door and talk to him and talk him down until I realized who he was. And this probably only lasted about 5 minutes. Like, in my mind, it feels like an hour.
Yeah, because it's an entire movie.
Yeah. But in the moment, I realized, wow, my heart rate hasn't even gone up. Like, this feels like I'm in class right now and I'm about to drill what to do if someone rushes you and tackles you, like how to deal with that in a jujitsu move. And that to me was a huge life-changing moment of how powerful it is to learn a martial art like that.
Mhm.
Like, it changed everything for me. Like,
Yeah, because if you were nervous, you would have grabbed a weapon, and then he would have grabbed a weapon, and then it escalates, and then you're a mess, right?
could end up killing him. Or maybe I grab a knife and kill the guy in accident. You don't want that.
Mhm.
If once you learn how any kind of self defense, you realize I don't want to be in a fight because it's dangerous. People get hurt that way. You can go to jail for stuff like that. So it just the way it made me feel so much more empowered, and now that really got me addicted to it. Of just like, I don't know, I can't get enough of it. Now I'm competing, which is it's about as close as you'll come to a street fight.
And how often a week do you train?
Probably 3 to 4 days a week.
And how many competitions are you entering every year?
So I've just started competing. I did one as a white belt a few years ago, several years ago, and then I just did my first as a purple belt last fall. I'm signed up in February to do another one.
Nice. Where are these events?
It's called the OC Open is the next one I'm doing down in Costa Mesa, I think is where it is, California.
Okay. And I mean, I mean, I understand why doing the training 3, 4 times a week helps you, gives you what you need. What do you get from the competitions that you're not getting from the training?
So for me, as a I'm a goal oriented person. Like I really like the focus because it gives me something to. Because if you don't, there's nothing wrong with if you don't want to compete. That's fine. If you're not competing, you're training. And a lot of people are like that. A couple days a week, go out there, get a good sweat, learn a few things, and that's fine. I like having something to strive towards, and that's what a competition will do. It'll force you to refine your technique.
Mhm.
To like, okay, last time I got beat by this move that I made. I'm not going to let that happen to me. So I'm going to practice this defense against that thing that that guy got on me. So it gives you something to really laser focus on, and that to me, I love that. That's it feels like being a filmmaker. I want to get this script done, or I want to get this movie made, or whatever.
Mhm.
That's super fun.
Mhm.
Super fun.
That's amazing. And you get to share that with your partner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she's still into it. It's fun because she gets to go. She knows, like, I don't have to like, okay, so these are the different positions and this is what I'm trying. She already knows all that stuff, so it
Mhm.
makes a lot of fun.
Does she compete as well?
No, she wants to, but she hasn't done it yet.
Okay. Epic. So you're the jiu-jitsu filmmaker.
Yeah, yeah. And I still haven't put jujitsu in a movie yet, but that's gonna change in the next one.
I feel like Bourdain's last season of television on Parts Unknown, he was just doing jiu-jitsu all over the world. I haven't had that if you wanna have that.
Oh, okay.
I haven't touched that. But, just sharing some water for everyone for everyone out there. But yeah, I feel like Bourdain was like I think he did an episode in Sao Paulo, and he went to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like, training center and rolled with a bunch of guys, and he's like, "I'm gonna do this anyways in my time off from filming, so you might as well just fucking film it and put it in."
I bet it could work too.
I love that though. I mean, I love it when people can take their passions, like, in the outside world and then bring it into
Yeah.
the entertainment or the storytelling that they want, 'cause it's fun, like, when you get to share your knowledge with, the wider world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, man, this is great. Is there anything we didn't talk about? Are you feeling good?
Man, I feel really good. It's like, yeah, I don't know what else we would say. Yeah, no, this is great.
Okay.
This is great.
All right. Well, look,
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
no, it's my pleasure. Well, now we can go up here and you can see the wide, and everyone can see we're in the same room. We don't do Zoom calls. Jay, great to meet you, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anytime anything comes out or you just want to catch up and chat, just come back.
For sure.
Yeah, I love it.
Cool, man.
All right. Take care. Oh, this is our only production quality. You like this? Fade to black. And we're out.